Welcome to iTTV for Form 2 Science, where we continue with our journey through the world of the senses. Today's lesson, the sense of hearing. Now, you're at home watching me and you can hear me, which means that you are using your ears. Your ears are the sense organs that detect the stimulus of sound. If I was to, for instance, do something like, you would not be able to hear me because at that moment I actually stopped making any sound. So the stimulus is sound. The main sense organ that detects this sound is our ear. We hear with our ears. The stimulus is sound. Now, sound, which we are going to look at a bit later on, is made by vibrations. These vibrations are going to enter into the ear and they are going to be detected by particular types of receptor cells that we have inside the ear. We hear sounds because our ears receive sound vibrations from the air, which are then translated into signals that are sent to our brain. So whatever the source of the sound is, whether it's a car on the road, or whether it's a drum being hit, or whether it's a voice being projected, they're all caused by vibrations. It's these vibrations that we pick up with our ears. And it's these vibrations that our ear translates into sound for us. Now, in order to do this, the ear is very specially designed and has got 3 different parts to it, each with its own job so that the sound can be translated and transferred efficiently. The human ear has 3 main parts. What we're going to do now is have a look at each of those parts, and I'll briefly describe the key organs or the key tissues in each of those areas. The outer ear is filled with air. It contains the pinna, ear canal, and eardrum. So let's begin with a diagram that will slowly construct the ear for us. We all start with this outer part of our ear. This is called the pinna. So we'll start over here. With our pinna. Now, this pinna, you'll notice, is very specially designed, okay? The idea of the pinna is to be able to catch sound and make the sound go into your ear, which is why your pinna is slightly folded and slightly sticking out of your head. So the main function of the pinna is to catch the sound and then send the sound into this area here. So let's go into this area here. This area here is called the auditory canal or ear canal. It takes the sound from the outside and sends it into the ear. The last part that we have, which is right on the inside here, is probably the most important part of the outer ear. This is your eardrum. Your eardrum is a thin piece of skin that vibrates. So the 3 main parts are, number 1, the pinna. Number 2, up here, the ear canal. And then number 3, over here, oops, the eardrum, which is probably the most important part of the outer ear. So that's our outer ear with the three main parts: pinna, ear canal, and eardrum. The middle ear is filled with air. The middle ear consists of the hammer, malleus, the anvil, incus, and the stirrup, stapes, the eustachian tube. So our middle ear actually consists of three tiny bones, which we call the ear bones. Now, it's a bit tricky to remember their names, but I'll show you a mnemonic in a moment that will help you remember them. So we start on the inside of the eardrum here. We have the first bone. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to draw three little bones connected to each other. So we've got the first bone here, which is connected here to the eardrum. Then we have the, whoops-a-daisy. Then we have the second bone, which sits here. It is connected to the first bone. Then we have the last bone, which is over here, which is connected to the first bone. So you have these three bones all connected to each other. Okay? What happens here is if this bone moves, imagine if this bone moves, these two must move with it. Okay? If this bone moves, these two bones must move with it. And that is a very key point in how the ear works. Now, let's name them. The first one up here is the hammer. The second one over here is the anvil, and the third one here is the stirrup. Now it's a bit tricky to remember their names, but if you just remember the first letter of each one, you have H, then you have A, and then you have S. So to remember the sequence of the bones, just remember the has bones. If you remember the has bones, you'll remember has is H, hammer, A, anvil, S, stirrup. So those are your has bones. Finally, right at the very end here, the stirrup is connected to an oval shaped object like this. This is called the oval window, like so. Okay, now we want to look at the last part of the middle ear, which is called the eustachian tube. The eustachian tube is a tube that sits underneath here, like so. Okay, let me label this. Eustachian tube. This eustachian tube, its function is to help balance the air pressure inside the middle ear and the outer ear. We really need to have the pressure the same in these two areas. If the pressure isn't the same, what you will have is a sense of pain inside your ear. You might have noticed this when you are traveling in an aeroplane, or if you go up in an elevator, your ear suddenly seems to be blocked. To unblock it, we swallow. And when we swallow, you can sort of hear like a popping sound. Well, what you're doing is you are swallowing to make sure that the air pressure inside here becomes the same as the air pressure outside here. Because sometimes when we move up and down in terms of height, the air pressure in here becomes slightly higher than the air pressure outside, and this can cause the ear to become painful. So that's our middle ear. We've got the hairs bones, which are connected from the eardrum all the way to the oval window. And then at the bottom of this area, we have the eustachian tube, which we use for balancing the air pressure. Okay, I think that's the best way to think about it, to balance the air pressure between the middle and outer ears. Now let's look at the last part of our ear, which is called the inner ear. The inner ear is filled with liquid. The inner ear contains the most important parts of the hearing mechanism: the semicircular canals and the cochlea. So these are the last two parts, which are both found in the inner ear. We'll deal with the cochlea first, because the cochlea is directly related to hearing. As we'll see later, the semicircular canals really don't have a function in terms of hearing, but it has another important function that we'll discuss later. So we are here now, and the inner ear is on this side. The cochlea is connected to this oval window. The cochlea, which is like a spiral, comes out from here and goes around in a circle like so. Okay? Just put the other side of it in to make it a nice spiral. Like so. This spiral is filled with fluid, so it's full of liquid inside it. Now I'm not going to color the whole thing, I'm just going to label, color just a little bit in here. Okay, so let's label this. This is known as the cochlea, and the cochlea contains liquid. You will find that the receptor cells for hearing are found inside the cochlea. Right, now we've gone through the main parts of the ear, the outer ear, middle ear, and inner ear. Let's try one or two questions on what we've learned so far now. The ear can be divided into how many parts? We've just gone over this. How many parts are there for the ear? Not the different bits and pieces, just how many main parts are there? Let's have a look at the answer. 3 parts: outer, middle, and inner ear. Let's try another question. The eardrum is found in which part? The eardrum is found in which part? All right, so now you've got to think a little bit. Where is that eardrum? Is it in the outer ear, the middle ear, or the inner ear? Let's have a look at the answer. The outer ear. Now that we've done a couple of questions and worked out the structure of the ear, let's have a look at how we actually hear. The mechanism of hearing. Now, in order to hear, there has to be some sound. The sound, remember, are caused by vibrations, and basically the idea is to gather these vibrations and send them into the ear. The pinna gathers sound waves and directs them to the auditory canal or the ear canal, whichever one you prefer. So let's have a start and go through this. Let's say that we have a sound and we have sound waves. The sound waves are approaching from, let's say, from over here, and let's say over here, like so. When these sound waves reach the pinna will reflect these sound waves. They will reflect these sound waves so that they enter into our ear canal. Now, in most cases, we lose a bit of sound during reflection. But studies have shown that our pinna is so well designed that 50% of the sound that strikes our pinna will be directed into the ear canal. So here the design of the pinna once again is so good that almost all the sound will enter into our ears. The sound waves reach the eardrum and make it vibrate. So now the sound which has been gathered by the pinna has been sent through the eardrum. It moves along here until it strikes the eardrum. When it strikes the eardrum starts to vibrate. So as it hits the eardrum, this eardrum starts to vibrate. The amount of vibration really depends on how strong the sound is. If you have a loud sound, it will vibrate quite a lot. If you have a soft sound, it just vibrates slightly. The vibrations are transmitted to the ossicles. This makes the ossicles vibrate. The vibrations are passed on to the oval window. So, remember what I was saying earlier, and it was quite an important thing I mentioned, that the three bones inside our middle ear, the hammer, anvil and stirrup, also known as the ossicles, are connected to the eardrum. Now, as this eardrum vibrates, these three are also going to vibrate at the same time. So, as the eardrum vibrates, it causes the hammer to vibrate. When the hammer vibrates, it causes the anvil to vibrate. And as the anvil vibrates, it causes the stirrup to also vibrate. So the vibration over here is passed along and it reaches the oval window. When it reaches the oval window, well, can you imagine what's going to happen? That's right. The oval window starts to vibrate, like so. So, the vibrations of sound that came into the pinna through the auditory canal, caused the eardrum to vibrate, is passed on to the hammer, anvil, and then stirrup, all vibrating, and when the stirrup vibrates, it causes the oval window to vibrate. Now, just a bit of trivia for you. Studies have shown that the three bones, when they vibrate, they actually amplify the sound, which means they make the sound signal stronger. Vibrations of the oval window cause the fluid in the cochlea to vibrate. So, we're at the oval window. The oval window now is vibrating. As the oval window vibrates, what happens is the liquid inside here starts to vibrate. Now, it's this liquid vibrating that is really the last and final and most important part. So remember, the oval window vibrates, the liquid inside the cochlea vibrates. Movement of the fluid stimulates sensory cells in the cochlea. Nerve impulses are generated. So inside the cochlea here, we've got all our receptors. As there's vibration coming out here, what happens is nerve impulses are released. So as these vibrate and vibrate and vibrate, nerve impulses come out from different parts of the cochlea, like so. So the liquid vibrating stimulates the receptor cells generate nerve impulses. The auditory nerve sends nerve impulse to the brain. The brain translates the impulses into words, music, or sounds that we hear. So all the nerve messages coming out from the cochlea merge together into one big signal that is sent along to the brain. So we get one final signal being fired to the brain. This nerve that connects the ear to the brain has a special name. It is called the auditory nerve. Auditory means hearing. So please remember that the final nerve has got a particular name. In this case, it is called the auditory nerve. So please remember this name, auditory nerve, because with all the other sense organs so far, we don't have a specific nerve that connects the organ to the brain. Auditory nerve, remember. And auditory means hearing. Now that we've gone through the mechanism of hearing, let's try a few questions on the mechanism of hearing. As sound waves reach the ear, they travel down the ear canal and make the dash vibrate. So remember, what is it that's going to actually vibrate? The first main thing that vibrates. We've got an answer. Let's have a look at it. The eardrum. As sound waves reach the ear, they travel down the ear canal and make the eardrum vibrate. Let's try another question. What do sound waves cause the eardrum to do? Look, we've just done this question. You should be able to answer this. What happens to the eardrum when it is hit by sound waves? Let's have a look at the answer. The eardrum causes the ossicles to vibrate. So remember, the ossicles are connected to the eardrum. When the eardrum starts to vibrate, the ossicles have to start to vibrate at the same time. One more question. What is located inside the cochlea? Now remember, the cochlea is the last part, that spiral part. What happens was the liquid inside there starts to vibrate and it causes something to happen. It's that something that we're looking for because it's inside the cochlea. Let's have a look at the answer. Sound receptors and liquid. So remember, the cochlea contains liquid and sound receptors. The auditory nerve sends messages to the dash. So the final part is the cochlea fires the messages. The messages are carried by the auditory nerve. Where does the auditory nerve carry the messages to? The answer is the brain. Now that we've had a look at a few questions on the mechanism, before we finish today's lesson, we want to have a look at the last part of the ear, which are the semicircular canals. The semicircular canals are not for hearing. They are used for balance. Now, our semicircular canals are the last thing that I'm going to draw on the board for you. They are in a unique position. The semicircular canals, like I said, are not for hearing. They actually sit inside the inner ear, just next to the cochlea. There are three little canals that are all at right angles to each other. These three semicircular canals basically contain liquid inside them. When we move our head around, the liquid moves and it allows us to maintain our balance. Please remember that they are not for hearing. Their function is for balance. So remember, the ear is the sense organ for hearing. It detects the stimulus of sound. It's got three main parts: the ear, outer, middle, and inner. As the sound comes in, it causes the eardrum to vibrate, which causes the three ossicles to vibrate, in turn, which causes the liquid in the cochlea to vibrate. The cochlea fires messages that are taken by the auditory nerve to the brain, and you can hear me speak. Please remember the pathway for hearing. It's very important. Pinna, ear canal, eardrum, ossicles, oval window, cochlea, auditory nerve, and brain. That's all for today's lesson. Thank you for watching iTTV.